Hello, my friends. I've got some big news. My birthday is this week, and I'm turning 54. While age doesn't bother me, given my history and a pretty serious health scare in my mid 30s, I am thankful for each and every day. Lately, I've been doing a lot of thinking about my life and career, which is why I wanted to take a moment to share something with you I have never shared on this podcast before. This event has tremendously shaped my life, career, and relationship. So I'm going to get very personal with you in this episode in hopes that what I'm going to share helps shape your mid career journey and helps you build your mid career GPS a little more intentionally. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. I'm your host, John Nerrill. I'm here with you each week, helping you find a job you love or love the job you have by using my proven four-step formula. This is episode 151. And as we start off a new month, I want to remind you that if you are looking for some more in-depth content about various leadership and career topics, I want to invite you to check out the brand new Mid-Career GPS Podcast Plus. It's the premium or paid version of my podcast where each month I bring you a special training or topic. Now, this month's topic is all about how to protect and promote your professional brand. So to learn more and subscribe for as little as $3 a month, you can check the show notes or visit the midcareergpspodcast.buzzsprout.com to subscribe and get this month's and all of the previous month's content as well. As I shared in the introduction, I am going to get very personal with you during this episode. While I don't plan on dropping any inappropriate words, it is important for me to share with you that the content may not be suitable for younger listeners, or it may be triggering for some of you. So, listener discretion is advised. As a kid growing up, I gave myself the nickname of Everlast because I was the school's punching bag. As a kid, I was bullied a lot. And while it wasn't a great experience, going through school in the late 70s and the early 80s, when it was very common to hear, boys will be boys, and you need to stand up for yourself, and don't let them push you around on the playground. Honestly, I didn't know how to defend myself. I was someone who would far rather talk it out, which usually ended up with me getting harassed or bullied and at times punched. I was in sixth grade. I was 11 years old. And admittedly, I think my parents were concerned and probably a little frustrated that I kept coming home every day in tears and talking about how somebody picked on me or, I ended up in another fight, that they decided to put me in karate lessons. Now, the fun part of that was karate wasn't the first place I tried out. So my parents took me to try judo. And of course, they give you the free lesson and everything. And I learned how to flip somebody over my hip. It was really cool. Like as an 11-year-old, you're like, holy crap, I can flip you over my hip. I mean, that was awesome. The problem is doing that with the school bully. I wasn't exactly sure I could do that. So karate ended up becoming the discipline of choice. I actually went with a classmate of mine and I did that for 3 months. I learned enough to defend myself, and it gave me a sense of confidence that I hadn't had before. But admittedly, I didn't want to be in a fight because pretty much I knew I was going to lose. And when you're that easy target, life isn't fun. How do you go home each and every day and say, oh, so-and-so picked on me again, and they pushed me in the playground, and I pushed back, and there was a fight, and I ended up in the principal's office again. I had numerous pairs of glasses broken. I had my share of a couple of black eyes. And at that time, it was part of the landscape that it was just accepted as quote unquote the growing up experience. I'm grateful in some ways. We've evolved and things are hopefully a little bit better, but we know they're not. We know that the bullying now goes into devices and social media. We know that suicide rates for kids are still way higher than we ever want them to be. We never, ever, ever want to lose a kid to taking their own life. And so I have struggled and I've been frustrated at times with trying to reconcile what it was back in the day and what my experiences were. Can I stand here before you today in front of this microphone and say, well, I'm very grateful that I was beaten up as a child and that helped me find my voice? No, no, because who wants to get the crap beaten out of them on a daily basis? But the truth of the matter was, when you get picked on and when you get beaten up, you have to learn things for survival. So I leave elementary school and I go to a high school that was about 23 miles away from where I lived and had to take a bus. And I thought the safest place to be on the bus was behind the bus driver. Nope, that's just the first people they pick on when you're on the bus. And so I ended up having to deal with the struggles about being bullied on the bus. And there were these, games they would play in the back of the bus where you'd have to fight to see who got to be in the seat, the last kind of a thing. And I would come home with gum in my hair. And I used to hate getting on the bus so much that when I would walk to the bus stop, which happened to be at the local train station, I would put a dime in my pocket every day. And I put that dime in my pocket because I knew I was probably going to get sick before I got on the bus. And that dime was to get me into the pay toilet. Can you imagine being so upset and worried and stressed out that you can't control your bowels before you get on the bus to go to school? I know that some of you are dealing with toxic work environments and abusive bosses and hateful coworkers and unhappiness in your jobs, that stress manifests itself for you in either similar or different ways. Nobody should have to live like that. And yet we take these experiences and we find a way to learn from them because that is how we evolve. So you get a little older, you don't get picked on as much, and you find ways to survive in the environment. I'm no angel. There is a part of my high school years where you follow this rule about if you're not being the one picked on, you're doing the picking. And there were some people where I just deflected in that way. And I bullied back. And I'm not proud of that. I also know that wasn't how I wanted to show up. And you make your apologies and your amends, and you go and you try to be a better person. And I'm very grateful that my college experiences were much different. I really enjoyed where I went to college. I went to Loyola College in Maryland, which is now Loyola University. It's in a great part of Baltimore. And sometimes when I have an opportunity to travel north, I will give it a wave as I pass by, or at least pass by on 95, and just kind of give the old college a little wave there and everything. But I was a senior in college. And this is the part that, I just have to say might be a little triggering for some of you. But I used to work for a major convenience store chain in the Northeast. And it was my summer job and I loved it. They were absolutely great to work for. And as a senior in college, I wanted to make a little bit more money. And so I got a transfer and I transferred to a store location that was about less than 2 miles away from my college dorm. So I worked a couple nights a week and occasionally a weekend and just tried to make some extra money and things like that. And I was working at the store at night. It was a 4 to midnight shift or 3 to 11 shift. It was probably around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And it was my job to take out some of the trash and the cardboard and stuff. And I grab my stuff and I start walking out the store and I'm headed towards the dumpster. And this guy approaches me and it was very dark out. And he looks at me and he goes, "Where are you going?" And of course, I said what anybody would say in that point: "Nowhere." Because I just like carrying around cardboard and hefty bags. So he goes, "No, where are you going with that stuff?" And I said, "Well, what's going on? Do you want to talk to me?" And he goes, "Yeah, I want to talk to you." I said, "Okay, what do you want to talk to me about?" And he goes, "Why don't you just keep walking to the dumpster?" And I was in front of the store window, like in front of the store with the doors and the windows and everything. So I was hoping somebody was going to see me. And the guy says to me, "Well, you're going to the dumpster. Why don't you keep walking?" I'm like, "No, if you need to talk to me here." And he looks at me and he says, "I think you need to see the inside of the dumpster." At that point, I felt like my stomach just dropped because I didn't know what to do. And I thought, do I drop everything and run? I didn't know if he had a knife or a gun. I didn't know what was going on there. I thought, well, I'm certainly not going to walk to the dumpster because that's probably not going to end well. And I just kind of stood there. And I remember my shift leader opened up the door and she goes, "John, get the hell in here right now." I think I actually brought everything back in with me. It's not like I think I left the stuff in the parking lot, but I brought it back into the store. And I remember I went into the back in the office and she was questioning me. What I didn't know was that they had already called 911. And when the guy came into the store, the police officers had arrived on scene. They came in, they were kind of checking things out. And the next thing I knew, this guy was a person of interest. He was arrested. There was a point they had him like on the floor, handcuffed in front of the coffee station. I was so scared. And I thought, oh my gosh, what could have happened? Because we play that out in our minds. We play all these different scenarios out. And I remember my shift manager being like, "It's okay. This just happens around here." I'm like, what? Like, those weren't my experiences. And I'm like, why are we saying this just happens around here? Like, no. And I remember I called out sick the next shift I was supposed to work. I'm like, "I'm not coming in." And they were like, "John, you need to figure this out." And there was part of me that felt dismissed. And there was part of me that felt acknowledged, but dismissed. I never really felt fully acknowledged about what had happened. And so I made a decision to quit. And I quit that job. I never went back. Um, I don't even think I even went back into that store. It was so traumatic for me. But when I think about how do you find your voice? How do you know how to stand up for yourself? It's something that I truly believe we learn because we've gotten beaten down so much that we learn to advocate and champion for ourselves because of those experiences. What I learned from that moment was I was never going to put myself in an unsafe work situation again, whether it be by an employer, a customer, or someone from the outside. I was never going to put myself in that kind of situation. When you're a people pleaser, when you always want to make people happy, it's probably the reason why I brought the garbage and the cardboard back into the store. I didn't want to have to anybody else have to clean up the mess afterward. When I think about that, when I think about how you're a people pleaser, you try to do the right thing, you want to make people happy, it is so easy for us to put ourselves on the back burner and not get what we want or what we need in a situation. Think about it. Think about the times when you stay late and you miss dinner with your family, or you miss your kid's game, or you work on a vacation, or you change plans. There are all of these things that we do as people pleasers to make other people happy, and yet we don't put ourselves first. I want to acknowledge there's a difference between selfish and selfless. Yes, there are times when you have to put in extra hours at work. There are times when it's all hands on deck, and your family will understand. Hopefully they do. But when it's a habit, if you are listening to this and you have gone to your employer and you have asked for a promotion and you have been given answers like it's not available, you haven't been here long enough, we chose somebody else, and you're never getting the information you need, and you are questioning whether or not it is ever going to happen for you there, I want to offer you to find your voice and ask the questions and have the intentional conversations you need so you get that information to help you make the most informed decision. I cannot be behind this mic today and tell you that at 54 years of age, I have always been great at finding and verbalizing and speaking my voice and my truth. I have not. It wasn't until I hit mid-career that I found ways to stand up for myself and advocate for what was important. And one of the best things that ever happened to me in my career was that for over 10 years, I served in union leadership for my local education association. Now, as many of you know, I had a 25-year career in education. And for the first 60% of that, I was a school teacher. And I had worked in a district where right after I had become tenured, I should say, my two presidents of the union approached me and they said, "We need you to be vice president." And I didn't want to do it. I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to stand up and have these kinds of conversations. They're like, "No, we'll help you. We'll train you. We'll do that." And I did. And one of the great things about being a union leader is you advocate for the good for everybody. You fight for things, you challenge things that are against the contract. You want to make sure that the agreements you've set or the ground rules you have set for how we all show up day in and day out are acknowledged and followed. And you do that to the best that you can. It is also at times a very thankless job. A lot of times people don't understand the work that you have to do or the things that you're doing that you can't talk about for confidentiality reasons. The advocacy and the support you do for your membership, the conversations you have to have with administration when they're going against the contract. I often say, I love the work. There were things I learned about my colleagues I wish I never knew. There were situations I was placed in that I wish I never had been. But you accept the calling and the service of being part of that. And I remember saying to myself one day driving home, this is about service. It may not be popular with certain people you work with, but this is about service. Now, one of the things that we had to do was we had to negotiate our contract. We had support from state level leadership as well, but essentially it's you versus them. And on two different occasions, I led a 10 to 12 person negotiating team that we negotiated with the local board of education, the superintendent, the board attorney. And there were some really interesting parts about it. I say the word interesting because we tried to make negotiating meetings fun. We would have theme nights. We would bring food in because we knew we were going to be there for hours. We would start negotiating at 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And we would go sometimes till midnight or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And yes, go to work the next day. This was part of the service. And I remember one particular year, my co-president and I, we were in the midst of a very, very contentious negotiations. It was not going well. We knew we were in for a long haul. And the issues on the table are not important here for the purpose of the story. But there are times when you as a union leader, you will have a one-off. You will go to the other side and you will talk and you will see if there's any wiggle room or whatever. And so after a contentious meeting at the table, my co-president and I decided to go talk with the other side. And in doing so, we walk into the room and my co-president, she starts off speaking. And I noticed that there was a gentleman in the room who refused to look at her. Have you ever been in a meeting and someone wouldn't acknowledge you? Have you ever spoken up and somebody completely dismissed you with their nonverbal behavior? I saw this. And oh my goodness, did this make me angry? And she continued to talk. And this person continued to look the other way and not look at her. And so when she got done, I called the person by name. And I named them. I called them out in front of everybody. And I said, you may choose not to look at my co-president when she is speaking, but you will show me the respect. And you will look at me when I'm speaking, and you will do the same for her the next time she speaks. Am I clear? You would have thought a bomb had dropped in that room. And he looked up from his notepad and he looked at me and he went, go ahead. And I proceeded to say what I needed to say. We wrapped up that meeting and we left. And the next day, I got called into my superintendent's office. Now, as a union leader, you have to draw a line between your work performance and then your job as a union leader. So we often joked about how we had different hats on. So I get called into this meeting and I get reprimanded over my tone and my behavior in addressing this official during this side meeting last night. And I looked at my superintendent and I said, are you done? So if you haven't been listening for a while, so I often say like being from New Jersey is part of my charm and it's not part of my charm. I was like, are you done? because your job is to keep your team in line. And we will not tolerate any disrespect from anyone. And I got up and I left. And I know it was heated. He was angry. I was angry. But you know what? When we came back to the table the next time, people looked at each other when they spoke to each other. That behavior didn't happen again. We don't need to be intimidated. We don't need to be bullied. We don't need to be disrespectful. But in that moment, finding my voice and calling that out was what I believed I needed to do, both for myself as well as for my colleague. We find our voice in a variety of situations because that's how we choose to show up. It is not easy. It is about being courageous and it is about being vulnerable. If you believe you are being overlooked at your job, speaking up about it and having an intentional conversation with someone about the evidence and why you feel that way, let's not overlook the importance of that conversation and how brave you must be in order to do that. In my life, there are so many times I go back and I think about that 11-year-old boy on the playground that got the crap kicked out of him time and time again. As an adult, I don't like to fight. I don't look for arguments, but I will stand up for myself. I will advocate for what I believe is best, both for me professionally as well as for myself personally. How you find your voice is such an important part of this mid-career journey. It's how you stand up and how you advocate for yourself. And my friends, I want to offer you this. Not every moment needs to be a victory. Not every moment needs to be this grandiose celebration of, yes, I stood up for myself, because it's not going to happen all the time. If there's one thing I've learned, is that if you miss an opportunity, it's going to come around again. You just learn from it and do better the next time. Finding your voice in your mid-career journey is yours and yours alone. No one can teach it to you. You have to learn by doing. You think about your professional brand and your reputation. And shameless plug, I talk about this a little bit more on the Mid-Career GPS Podcast Plus episode if you want to subscribe and check that out. But you think about your brand and your reputation and how well you deliver on that. What do you want people to know you for? What is the legacy you are going to leave behind when your coworkers talk about the work you've done, the people you've served? What are you going to be known for? They're going to know you for how you made them feel. That great quote by Maya Angelou. They're going to know you by how you supported them and championed them. As mid-career professionals, you have tremendous responsibility, especially if you are leading a team or leading a group or an organization, to take care of them and do what you believe is best for them, because you in that leadership role have a voice to speak for them. We're not perfect individuals, but the totality of our work must be such that you find your voice, you exercise it, and by all means, you show up powerfully, authentically, and genuinely as the amazing person and professional you are to make the difference you are charged with each and every day. So on this episode, My birthday wish for you is that you do something this week to find your voice or strengthen your voice a little bit more. Because, my friends, you have a lot to offer and a lot to give. And I am so honored that after 151 episodes, we continue to figure this mid-career journey out and build your mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time. I wanted to do this episode for episode 150 and celebrate that milestone, but the cold virus thing, whatever I had, and taking my voice out wasn't really great. So I am glad my voice is a little bit stronger. So if you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor, share it with somebody you know. Text them the link to this and say, hey, this was a great episode. I'd love you to take a listen. And by all means, encourage them to subscribe or follow the Mid-Career GPS. If you don't know, I also have a free guide on my website. It is called 5 Mistakes Mid-Career Professionals Make and Need to Stop Doing. You can check the show notes or visit my website at johnneral.com, JOHNNERAL.com, and get a copy of that free career guide. It also enters you into my email community where each week I share information about various leadership and career topics. And if you're looking for a little bit more, check the show notes to subscribe to the Mid-Career GPS Podcast Plus. So, my friends, thank you so very much. It is always an honor and a privilege to be with you each and every week. I'll be back with you next week with a great interview and conversation. Next week's topic is all about helping strengthen your leadership style and leadership presence. I've got a great guest for you next week. But until then, remember this. We build our mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how we show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Mid-Career GPS Podcast. Make sure to follow on your favorite listening platform. And if you have a moment, I'd love to hear your comments on Apple Podcasts. Visit johnneral.com for more information about how I can help you build your mid-career GPS, or how I can help you and your organization with your next workshop or public speaking event. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Neral Coaching. I look forward to being back with you next week. Until then, take care, and remember, how we show up matters.